What happens when a camping trip with a married coworker ends not with secrets kept, but with legal documents delivered to my door? How did a night of innocent fun become the evidence my husband used to erase me from our lives? Can honesty ever fix what's already shattered, or does it just give someone the power to end you quietly, with proof? The notification sound from my phone made my heart skip. Another message from Drew. I glanced around the office cubicles, making sure no one was watching before opening it. Can't wait for the camping trip this weekend. Just thinking about sharing that tent has me distracted all day. I bit my lip, feeling that familiar flutter in my stomach. Drew Calloway was everything my husband John wasn't. Attentive, exciting, spontaneous. Where John spent his evenings buried in code and spreadsheets, barely acknowledging my presence, Drew made me feel alive again. Isolde, you coming to lunch? Lisa Travers appeared at my desk, her curious eyes already trying to peek at my phone screen. I quickly locked it. Sure, just finishing up this report. Lisa was my closest friend at Morrison & Associates, and the only person who knew about my growing feelings for Drew. She'd been encouraging me for weeks to live a little and stop waiting for John to notice me. At the sandwich shop across the street, Lisa leaned forward conspiratorially. So, tomorrow's the big camping trip. You excited? It's just a team-building retreat, I said, though my cheeks burned. Nothing's going to happen. Come on, Isolde. You've been miserable for months. John treats you like a roommate, not a wife. When's the last time he even asked about your day? She was right. Last night, I'd tried telling John about the promotion opportunity in our department, and he'd just grunted without looking up from his laptop. We'd become strangers, sharing a house and a 7-year-old daughter. Drew's married too, I reminded her. To a man who travels constantly for work. They're basically living separate lives anyway. Lisa stirred her iced coffee thoughtfully. Look, I'm not saying you should blow up your marriage, but maybe you deserve to feel wanted again. That evening, I packed my camping gear while John sat in his study, door closed as usual. Sophie bounced around my bedroom, chattering about her sleepover at Grandma Helen's house. Why can't Daddy come camping too? She asked, holding up my sleeping bag. It's just for work, sweetheart. Daddy has his own projects to finish. But you'll be lonely without us. If only she knew how lonely I already was. I'll be fine, baby. It's just one night. John emerged from his study as I was loading my car. Drive safe, he said mechanically, already turning back toward the house. John, I caught his arm. Maybe when I get back we could talk. About us. He looked at me with those distant grey eyes. Sure. Whatever. The campsite was 2 hours north, nestled beside a pristine lake. Our department had rented a cluster of sites, and everyone was setting up tents and starting fires as I arrived. Drew waved from across the clearing, his smile making my pulse quicken. Isolde, over here! He jogged over, taking my camping gear. I saved you a spot right next to mine. The evening passed in a blur of s'mores, ghost stories, and stolen glances. As the group gradually dispersed to their tents, Drew and I found ourselves alone by the dying fire. Beautiful night, he said, moving closer on the log we shared. It is. My voice came out breathier than intended. You know, Liam's been gone for 3 weeks now. Sometimes I forget what it feels like to have someone actually want to spend time with me. I knew the feeling. John and I are like ships passing in the night. I can't remember the last time we had a real conversation. Drew's hand found mine. You deserve better than that. When he suggested we share his larger tent, just for warmth, the temperature's supposed to drop, I knew I was crossing a line. But Lisa's words echoed in my head. When was the last time anyone had made me feel this desirable? The tent was cozy, our sleeping bags zipped together, for extra insulation. In the darkness, with Drew's arms around me and his lips on mine, I felt more alive than I had in years. We didn't go all the way, but we came close enough that I knew there was no taking it back. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and guilt. "This stays between us," Drew whispered. "What happens at camp stays at camp." I nodded, though part of me wondered if secrets this big could ever really stay buried. The next morning, I noticed Lisa taking pictures of the group breaking down camp. She winked at me when she caught me emerging from Drew's tent, my hair mussed and cheeks flushed. "Get any good shots?" I asked nervously. "Oh, you know me. I document everything." She showed me her phone screen. Dozens of photos from the weekend. "Don't worry, I know which ones to keep private." The drive home felt surreal. I kept replaying every moment with Drew, every touch and whispered word. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd almost convinced myself it had been innocent, just emotional support between two lonely people. John was in the kitchen when I entered, making coffee with mechanical precision. "How was camping?" he asked without turning around. "Fine, productive, good team building." The lies came easily. Sophie ran in from the living room, throwing her arms around my waist. "Mommy, I missed you. Grandma Helen made pancakes and we watched movies and—" "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar scent. This was real. This was what mattered. But even as I went through the motions of unpacking and doing laundry, my phone buzzed with messages from Drew. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? This doesn't have to be complicated." I deleted each message after reading it, but the words burned in my memory. That evening, after Sophie was asleep and John had retreated to his study again, I found myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. For the first time in months, I looked alive. My eyes were bright, my skin glowing. Drew had awakened something in me that I'd thought was dead. My phone buzzed again. Lisa this time. "How are you feeling about everything? No regrets, I hope. You deserve to be happy." I typed back, "No regrets. But this stays between us, right?" "Of course, no one will ever know, unless you tell them yourself." As I got ready for bed, I felt both thrilled and terrified. I'd stepped into dangerous territory, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Surely I could manage this. Surely I was smart enough to keep my two worlds separate. I had no idea that my carefully constructed secret was already beginning to unravel. Monday morning at the office felt different. I kept catching coworkers glancing at me, then quickly looking away when I met their eyes. "Paranoid," I told myself. "You're being paranoid." Drew stopped by my desk around 10, casual as always. "Morning, Isolde. Great weekend, wasn't it?" "Very productive," I replied, hyper-aware of who might be listening. But his eyes held mine a beat too long, and I saw Janet from accounting notice the exchange. When Drew walked away, she immediately started whispering to her cubicle neighbor. At lunch, Lisa seemed unusually quiet. We sat in our usual corner booth, but instead of her normal chatter, she kept checking her phone with a worried expression. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Isolde, I need to tell you something." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Some of the photos from this weekend, they're circulating." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, circulating?" "I posted a few in the department group chat. You know, just general team-building stuff, but—" She pulled up her phone, scrolling through messages. "People are asking questions about why you and Drew were sharing a tent." "What are they saying exactly?" Lisa showed me the chat. Mixed among innocent comments about the beautiful scenery were more pointed observations. Interesting sleeping arrangements. Didn't know Morrison and Associates allowed that kind of team building. Wonder what their spouses think about the tent situation. My hands shook as I read. "Lisa, you said you'd be careful with the photos." "I was. I only posted the group shots. But people aren't stupid, Isolde. They can see you coming out of his tent in the background of one picture." That afternoon, I couldn't concentrate on work. Every conversation seemed to stop when I approached. The office manager, Patricia, called me into her office around 3. "Isolde, I wanted to give you a heads up. There's been some chatter about the camping trip. Nothing official. but HR might want to have a conversation with you soon. About what? We didn't do anything wrong. Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. I'm sure it's nothing. Just be prepared. When I got home that evening, John was already there, which was unusual. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, but instead of coding, he seemed to be reading something intently. You're home early, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Helen called. She heard some interesting things at her book club today. My blood turned to ice. John's mother had friends everywhere, including several women who worked at companies that did business with Morrison and Associates. What kind of things? John's grey eyes were colder than I'd ever seen them. Something about my wife sharing accommodations with a male coworker on a business trip. John, that's ridiculous. It was a group camping trip. Everyone was in tents. Everyone was in their own tents, Isolde, except you. The way he said my name, flat, emotionless, made me realize how serious this was becoming. It wasn't like that. The temperature dropped and Drew had a larger tent. It was purely practical. Practical. He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. And you didn't think to mention this practical arrangement when I asked about your trip? Because I knew you'd overreact, just like you're doing now. Sophie wandered into the kitchen, drawn by our raised voices. Mommy, Daddy, why are you fighting? We're not fighting, sweetheart, I said quickly. Just discussing work stuff. John stood up, closing his laptop. Sophie, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy and I need to finish talking. After she left, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. John, I swear to you, nothing happened. Then you won't mind if I contact Drew's husband to clear up any misunderstandings? Panic flared in my chest. That's unnecessary. Why would you want to cause problems for other people over gossip? Because my wife's reputation is being discussed at my mother's book club, Isolde. Because people at your office are sending around photos and making jokes. Because for the first time in our marriage, I'm wondering if I actually know the person I'm married to. That night, John slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had everything spiraled so quickly? It had been one night, one moment of feeling desired and alive. Surely this would blow over. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Starbucks on 5th Street tomorrow at lunch. Come alone. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Who was this? How did they get my number? The next morning, Drew looked haggard when he arrived at work. He avoided eye contact as he passed my desk, but slipped me a note. HR called me in for a meeting this afternoon. We need to get our stories straight. At lunch, I drove to the Starbucks with sweaty palms. A woman I didn't recognize sat in the corner booth, waving me over. She was middle-aged, well-dressed, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. Isolde Merrin, I'm Carol Stevens. I work in HR at Pinnacle Consulting. That's Liam Calloway's company. My mouth went dry. Drew's husband's workplace. Liam received some interesting photos yesterday. Anonymous email. His husband and a female coworker emerging from the same tent at what appears to be a company retreat. I don't understand why that concerns you. Carol's smile was razor-sharp. Because Liam is one of our senior partners, and he's asked me to conduct a discreet investigation into his husband's workplace conduct. He's particularly interested in whether Morrison and Associates has policies about extramarital relationships between employees. There is no relationship. Then you won't mind if I share these photos with your HR department. I'm sure they'll want to investigate as well, just to protect the company from any potential liability. I felt trapped. What do you want? Honesty. What happened at that campsite? The lie came automatically. Nothing happened. Drew was being friendly, offering to share his tent when the temperature dropped. That's all. Carol made a note on her tablet. Interesting, because the metadata on these photos shows they were taken at different times throughout the night. Someone was documenting your friendship quite thoroughly. She slid her tablet across the table. The photos were damning. Drew and me by the fire, sitting close together. Me entering his tent. the two of us emerging together in the morning, my hair disheveled, his arm around my waist. These were sent anonymously, along with screenshots of text messages between you and Mr. Calloway. Very intimate messages. My vision blurred. Someone had been watching us, documenting everything. But who? I'll be in touch, Mrs. Merrin. I suggest you prepare for some difficult conversations. That afternoon, I confronted Lisa in the break room. Did you send photos to Drew's husband? What? No, Isolde, why would I do that? Someone's been collecting evidence, photos, text messages, someone who was there that night. Lisa's face went pale. Oh, God. You don't think... Janet was asking me a lot of questions yesterday about the camping trip, and she's friends with that woman from Pinnacle Consulting. They go to the same gym. Janet from accounting, the same Janet who'd noticed Drew and me talking that morning. She must have seen the group chat photos and done some digging, Lisa continued. Isolde, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. When I got home, John was waiting in the kitchen again. This time, he had a manila folder in front of him. We need to talk, he said quietly. John, I can explain. I received a very interesting phone call today from HR at Morrison & Associates. Apparently, they've received a formal complaint about inappropriate conduct between employees. He opened the folder, revealing printed screenshots of text messages, my text messages with Drew. Can't wait for tomorrow night. You make me feel alive again. This is our secret. How did you get these? Does it matter? The question is, are they real? I stared at the evidence of my betrayal, printed in black and white. There was no denying it now. John, I've made an appointment with a lawyer for tomorrow morning, he said calmly. I suggest you do the same. As he walked toward the stairs, I grabbed his arm. Please, can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work it out? He looked down at my hand on his sleeve, then back at my face. You made your choice, Isolde. Now I'm making mine. That night, I sat alone in our bedroom, staring at my phone. Drew had sent one final message. Liam knows everything. I'm sorry, but I can't see you anymore. I have to try to save my marriage. Even my affair partner was abandoning me, but the worst was yet to come, because tomorrow, HR would call me in with their folder of screenshots, and I would discover just how thoroughly my secret had been exposed. The HR meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I spent the morning throwing up from nerves, my hands shaking as I tried to apply concealer under my eyes. John had already left for work without a word, and Sophie kept asking why I looked sick. Just a little bug, sweetheart. Grandma Helen will pick you up from school today. Patricia escorted me to the HR office, her expression sympathetic but professional. Inside, I found not just our HR director, Marcus Webb, but also our department head and a woman I didn't recognize. Isolde, please sit down, Marcus said. This is Jennifer Walsh from our legal department. My stomach dropped further. Legal? We've received some serious allegations about conduct during the recent camping retreat, Marcus continued, opening a thick folder. I want to give you the opportunity to tell your side of the story before we proceed. What allegations exactly? Jennifer leaned forward. We have documentation suggesting an inappropriate relationship between you and Andrew Calloway. Photos, text messages, and witness statements. Witness statements? Marcus slid a paper across the table. Several coworkers have come forward with concerns about your behavior, both during and after the camping trip. I scanned the document. Janet from accounting had provided a detailed account of Drew and me acting intimate by the campfire. Tom from IT had noticed us sneaking off together during the evening. Even Lisa had given a statement, though hers was more sympathetic, describing me as lonely in her marriage and Drew as taking advantage of her vulnerability. This is all blown out of proportion, I said desperately. Yes, we shared a tent, but nothing inappropriate happened. Marcus opened his laptop, turning the screen toward me. These text messages suggest otherwise. There they were again, my private conversations with Drew, displayed for a room full of colleagues to analyze. How did you get these? That's not relevant to this investigation, Jennifer said. What matters is that we have evidence of an extramarital affair between two married employees, which violates our company policy on workplace conduct. We're going to need you to provide a written statement about your relationship with Mr. Calloway, Marcus added. And I should inform you that we're conducting a parallel investigation into whether any company resources were used to facilitate this relationship. Company resources? I don't understand. Company phones, computers, vehicles. The camping trip was a company-sponsored event, Mrs. Merrin. If it was used as an opportunity for an affair, that's a serious policy violation. I felt the walls closing in. What happens now? That depends on your statement and the outcome of our investigation. Potential consequences range from formal reprimand to termination. Termination. I could lose my job over this. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a blank piece of paper, trying to figure out what to write. How could I explain the camping trip without admitting to the affair? How could I minimize the damage while still being honest? John came home late, going straight to his study without acknowledging me. When I knocked on his door an hour later, he didn't answer. John, please, we need to talk about this. I have nothing to say to you right now. What about Sophie? What are we going to tell her? The door opened suddenly, and John's face was harder than I'd ever seen it. We're going to tell her that her mother made some very poor choices, and now there are consequences. Don't you dare turn our daughter against me. I'm not turning anyone against you, Isolde. You did this to yourself. Friday night, we had dinner plans with Tom and Sarah Mitchell, old friends from college. I begged John to cancel, but he refused. We're going, he said firmly, and you're going to act normal. The restaurant was crowded and loud, which I hoped would provide cover for our obvious tension. But as soon as we sat down, I could tell something was wrong. Tom and Sarah kept exchanging glances, and the conversation felt forced. So, Isolde, Sarah said carefully, how was that camping trip? Tom mentioned there was some drama afterward. My blood froze. Tom worked in IT at a company that shared office space with Morrison and Associates. Of course he'd heard the gossip. Just typical office politics, I said lightly. You know how people love to create stories. Stories? Tom raised an eyebrow. That's not what I heard. John set down his fork. What exactly did you hear, Tom? That Isolde spent the night in another man's tent. That there are photos. That HR is investigating. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Tom, Sarah hissed. Maybe we shouldn't... No, it's fine, I said, my voice getting louder. Everyone wants to know, right? Everyone's been talking about it behind my back anyway. Other diners were starting to look our way, but I couldn't stop myself. Yes, I shared a tent with Drew Calloway. Yes, we're friends. Yes, my marriage has been falling apart for years while my husband ignores me and treats me like a piece of furniture. Isolde, John said quietly, stop. Stop what? Stop telling the truth? Stop admitting that I'm lonely? That I felt more alive in one night with someone who actually pays attention to me than I have in years with you? The restaurant had gone noticeably quieter around us. I could feel dozens of eyes watching our table. You want to know what happened? I stood up, my voice carrying across the dining room. Drew made me feel like a woman again, instead of just a mother and a housekeeper. He listened to me, he saw me, and yes, we kissed. We held each other. And I don't regret it because it reminded me that I'm still alive. Sarah's face was crimson with embarrassment. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear. John sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Are you finished? He asked calmly. No, I'm not finished. I'm tired of being the villain here. I'm tired of everyone acting like I'm some kind of monster for wanting to feel loved. You're right, John said, standing up slowly. You're not a monster. You're just selfish. He threw his napkin on the table and walked out, leaving me standing there with every eye in the restaurant fixed on me. Tom and Sarah made hasty excuses and left, Sarah shooting me a look of pure disappointment. I sat back down, my hands shaking, and tried to finish my wine while pretending not to notice the whispers and stares. When I finally got home, John's study door was locked again. I could hear him on the phone, speaking in low tones. I pressed my ear to the door, catching fragments. Documented everything. Custody arrangements. As soon as possible. I knocked frantically. John, open this door. Who are you talking to? The conversation stopped, but the door remained locked. That night, I lay alone in our bed, replaying the disaster at the restaurant. I'd meant to control the narrative, to present myself as the wronged party. Instead, I'd created a public spectacle that would be gossiped about for weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Heard about dinner. Maybe lay low for a while. Even my closest friend was distancing herself, but the worst part was the silence from John's study, where I could still hear him working late into the night. The clicking of his keyboard, the rustle of papers, the occasional phone call. He was planning something. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I was truly afraid. Monday morning brought a formal summons to HR, not a request for a meeting, a summons delivered by Patricia with an apologetic expression and instructions to bring any personal items you might need. The same conference room, but this time with additional faces. Marcus Webb, Jennifer Walsh, and now Dr. Elizabeth Torres, whom I recognized as the company's employee assistance counselor. Mrs. Merrin, Marcus began, thank you for coming. We've completed our preliminary investigation into the allegations regarding your conduct during the company camping retreat. He slid a thick folder across the table. These are copies of evidence we've collected. You're entitled to review them before we proceed. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The first page was a timeline, meticulously detailed. Friday, 7:30 p.m. Subjects observed sitting together by campfire. Physical contact noted. Friday, 9:15 p.m. Subject Merrin observed entering Subject Calloway's tent. Friday, 11:43 p.m. Tent movement consistent with intimate activity. Saturday, 6:22 a.m. Both subjects emerged from tent together, disheveled appearance. Someone was watching us all night, I whispered. Multiple witnesses provided statements, Jennifer said. The timeline was corroborated by several sources. I flipped to the next section, screenshots of text messages between Drew and me, dating back weeks before the camping trip. Can't wait to get you alone this weekend. John will never know. You make me feel things I forgot I could feel. This is our little secret. These are private communications, I protested. How did you get them? Marcus's expression was grave. Mrs. Merrin, these screenshots were provided by a concerned party who felt obligated to report potential policy violations. What concerned party? We're not at liberty to disclose that information. The next pages contained photos, not just the camping trip, but screenshots from social media, office security camera footage, showing Drew and me in what they termed intimate conversations, in break rooms and empty conference rooms. Someone had been building a case against us for weeks. This is stalking, I said desperately. Whoever did this is obsessed. Mrs. Merrin, Dr. Torres interrupted gently. These materials were provided to us by your husband. The room spun around me. What? Mr. Jonathan Merrin contacted our office last Wednesday with concerns about his wife's conduct. He provided these materials as evidence of policy violations that could expose the company to liability. John had done this. He can't do that. Those are my private messages. Actually, Jennifer said, consulting her notes, the text messages were retrieved from your shared phone plan. As the primary account holder, your husband has legal access to communication records. The photos were taken by various employees who became concerned about your behavior. Concerned enough to spy on me? Concerned enough to document potential harassment, Marcus corrected. Mrs. Merrin, several female employees have expressed discomfort with the situation. They're worried about a hostile work environment, if affairs between married colleagues are overlooked. I thought of Janet from accounting, always watching, always listening. Had she orchestrated this? I want to speak to Drew, I said. I want to hear his side of this. Mr. Calloway has already provided his statement, Jennifer said, sliding another paper across the table. He's been very cooperative. I read Drew's statement with growing horror. Mrs. Merrin pursued me aggressively for several weeks before the camping trip. I tried to maintain professional boundaries, but she was persistent. I admit I made poor judgment in allowing her to share my tent, but I want to emphasize that I did not initiate the physical contact. Mrs. Merrin seemed to be having marital problems and was seeking inappropriate comfort from male colleagues. He's lying. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. He pursued me. He invited me to share his tent. Mrs. Merrin, please sit down, Dr. Torres said calmly. No, this is insane. Drew is rewriting history to save himself. Do you have any evidence to contradict his statement? Marcus asked. I thought frantically. The text messages showed mutual interest, but they could be interpreted either way. The photos showed us together, but not who initiated contact. He told me his marriage was falling apart, I said weakly. He said Liam was never home. According to Mr. Calloway's statement, Jennifer read, you frequently complained about your marriage and asked inappropriate questions about his relationship. He states that he tried to redirect these conversations to professional topics. They had turned everything around. Every moment of connection, every shared confidence, reframed as me being predatory and inappropriate. This isn't fair, I whispered. Mrs. Merrin, Marcus said, we're prepared to offer you a choice. You can resign immediately with a neutral reference, or we can proceed with formal disciplinary action that will likely result in termination for cause. What about Drew? Mr. Calloway has agreed to undergo counseling and sensitivity training. He's also requested a transfer to our Denver office to avoid any further complications. Of course, Drew got counseling and a fresh start. I got fired. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning, Marcus said. Dr. Torres has information about employee assistance programs that might help you through this transition. I stumbled out of the conference room in a daze. At my desk, I found a cardboard box and a security guard waiting. Ma'am, I'll need to escort you while you pack your personal items, the guard said apologetically. The entire office watched as I cleared out my desk. 7 years of my career reduced to a box of photos and coffee mugs. Lisa approached hesitantly. Isolde, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Did you know? I asked. Did you know John was collecting evidence? No, I swear, I had no idea. I thought you deserved to be happy. Well, congratulations. I'm unemployed, my marriage is over, and I'm the office pariah. I'm deliriously happy. At home, I found John waiting in the kitchen with another manila folder. How could you? I screamed. How could you destroy my career? I didn't destroy anything, Isolde. You did. I just documented it. Those were private messages. Nothing is private when you're committing adultery on our shared phone plan. His voice was eerily calm. Nothing is private when you're using company resources to conduct an affair. I lost my job. You lost your job because you violated company policy. Actions have consequences. I sank into a chair, the weight of everything crashing down on me. What happens now? John opened the new folder. Now we discuss the terms of our divorce. The papers inside were thorough and devastating. Custody arrangements that gave him primary placement of Sophie. Division of assets that left me with almost nothing. Spousal support that was minimal and temporary. You can't take Sophie away from me. I'm not taking her away. But I am ensuring she has stability while you figure out your life. John, please, can't we try counseling? Can't we work through this? He looked at me with something that might have been pity. Isolde, you stood up in a restaurant full of people and announced that you don't regret cheating on me. You humiliated our family in public. What exactly do you think counseling is going to fix? That night, Sophie asked why I was crying at dinner. Mommy's just having a hard day at work, sweetheart. But you'll feel better tomorrow, right? I looked at my daughter's trusting face, then at John's impassive expression across the table. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. But deep down, I knew that tomorrow would only bring more consequences for choices I was finally beginning to understand I couldn't undo. The divorce papers sat on my kitchen table like a death sentence. John had given me a week to review them and respond, but every time I tried to read through the legal language, my vision blurred with tears. I'd been unemployed for 3 days, and the silence in the house was deafening. John left early for work and came home late, spending his evenings locked in his study. Sophie kept asking why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room, and I was running out of excuses. Maybe Daddy's just having trouble sleeping, I told her over breakfast Thursday morning. But why won't he talk to you anymore? Did you have a big fight? Before I could answer, John appeared in the kitchen, dressed for work and carrying his laptop bag. Sophie, Grandma Helen is picking you up from school today, he said without looking at me. You'll be staying at her house tonight. Why? Sophie's lower lip trembled. I want to stay home. It's just for one night, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy need to have some grown-up conversations. After they left, I found myself alone with the divorce papers and a terrible curiosity about what John had been doing in his study every night. The door was locked, as always, but I knew he kept a spare key in his desk drawer upstairs. The study was meticulously organized, which was typical John. But what I found there made my blood run cold. 3 large binders sat on his desk, each labeled with dates. I opened the first one, dated 2 months ago, long before the camping trip. Inside were printed screenshots of my text messages, not just with Drew, but with Lisa and other friends. Messages where I complained about feeling neglected, where I mentioned Drew's attention, where I gradually worked up the courage to pursue him. John had been monitoring my communications for months. The second binder contained financial records, bank statements, credit card bills, even my employment records that he'd somehow obtained. Everything was highlighted and annotated in his precise handwriting. Lunch expenses increased 40% in March. Meeting with Callaway? New clothing purchases? Trying to impress someone? Overtime claims don't match actual departure times per building security. The third binder was the most damning. Photos printed from social media, security camera screenshots from my office building, even what appeared to be surveillance photos of me meeting Lisa for coffee. Someone had been helping him. Someone with access to office security systems and employee records. My phone rang, making me jump. Helen's number. Isolde, dear, we need to talk. John's mother had never liked me, barely tolerating me for Sophie's sake, but her tone now was colder than I'd ever heard it. What about Helen? About the mess you've made of my son's life. Sophie is asking questions I don't know how to answer. She doesn't need to know the details. She knows enough. Children aren't stupid, Isolde. She knows her family is falling apart because of your choices. I closed the binders, my hands shaking. Helen, this is between John and me. No, it's not. The moment you decided to humiliate my son publicly, you made it everyone's business. The moment you decided to throw away your marriage for some office fling, you made it Sophie's business too. I made a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions, and now you're going to face the consequences. She hung up, leaving me staring at the evidence of John's methodical documentation of my betrayal. That evening, when John came home, I was waiting in the kitchen with the binders. You've been spying on me for months, I said. He looked at the binders, then at me, showing no surprise that I'd found them. I've been protecting my interests, he said calmly. Protecting your interests? John, you violated my privacy. You violated our marriage vows. I documented it. How did you get security camera footage from my office? How did you get my employment records? John sat down across from me, his expression unreadable. I have friends, Isolde, people who care about me and were concerned about my marriage. Who? Who helped you do this? Does it matter? The evidence speaks for itself. I flipped through the pages, seeing my life dissected and analyzed like a crime scene. This is obsessive, John. This isn't normal behavior. What's not normal is carrying on an affair and then acting like the victim when you get caught. I wasn't having an affair. It was one night. One night that you built up to for months. One night that you lied about repeatedly. One night that you defended publicly and said you didn't regret. He was right, and I hated him for it. What do you want from me? I whispered. What will it take for you to forgive me? John was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. There's nothing to forgive, Isolde. Forgiveness implies that I'm angry, and I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. Done? Done pretending we have a marriage worth saving. Done pretending you're the person I thought I married. Done wasting energy on something that's already dead. His words hit me like physical blows. John, please. I've filed the divorce papers. You'll be served officially tomorrow. Tomorrow? But you said I had a week to review. That was before I found out you were going through my private office. Your private office? This is our house. Actually, John said, standing up, as of tomorrow, it's my house. The temporary custody order gives me primary residence with Sophie. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. The room spun around me. You can't kick me out of my own home. It's not your home anymore, Isolde. Check the mortgage documents. Check the deed. Everything is in my name. I stared at him, seeing a stranger. When did you become so cruel? I became practical. There's a difference. That night, I packed a suitcase with shaking hands, while John sat in the living room with Sophie, reading her a bedtime story like nothing was wrong. Where are you going, Mommy? Sophie asked when I kissed her goodnight. Just a little trip, sweetheart. I'll see you soon. But I don't want you to go. I know, baby, but sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. John appeared in the doorway. The custody agreement allows for supervised visitation on weekends, he said quietly. We'll work out a schedule. Supervised visitation, like I was a danger to my own daughter. I drove to a hotel near the highway, the cheapest one I could find. In the sterile room that smelled of industrial disinfectant, I finally broke down completely. Everything was gone. My job, my marriage, my home, my daughter. All for one night of feeling desired, one moment of believing I deserved more than what I had. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Process server will be at the hotel at 9 a.m. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Even in exile, John was still watching, still controlling, still one step ahead. I curled up on the scratchy hotel bedspread and cried until I had no tears left, wondering how I'd become the villain in my own life story. The process server handed me the divorce papers at 9 a.m. Inside, John had moved our savings into his name only, custody evaluations calling me unstable, and a restraining order barring me from our house or Sophie's school. My public defender was blunt. Your case is weak. You admitted the affair publicly. He has thorough evidence. You might negotiate visitation and $800 monthly spousal support for 2 years. $800 after 7 years of marriage. That afternoon, I drove to Sophie's school, forgetting the order. A guard escorted me out as parents stared. Helen held Sophie back. My daughter called, Mummy, why can't you come get me? I drove away, tears blurring the rear view. Lisa called that evening. People are talking. Some think you brought this on yourself. John called next. Meet tomorrow at Morrison & Associates to sign final papers. In conference room B, John sat with his lawyer, Amanda. No negotiation, he said. You have no job, no home. Any judge will side with me. Amanda outlined the terms. Supervised visitation every other weekend, 3 hours each at a neutral location. Spousal support reduced to $600 for 18 months. Contest it, and he'd seek no visitation. When did you become so heartless? I asked. When you chose another man over our family, John replied. It was months of lies, not one night. They slid the pen across the table. I thought of Sophie's confused face, the hotel costing $60 a night, the job applications needing references I couldn't provide. I signed. John handed me a prepared statement for family and friends. Amicable divorce due to my extramarital relationship. He'd retain primary custody. It's the story we'll tell Sophie, he said. That evening, the statement spread online. Comments mixed sympathy with gossip. John texted, First visitation Saturday, 10 a.m., 1 p.m. at Family Services Center. Don't be late. 3 hours. From full-time mother to 3 supervised hours every other weekend. I opened my laptop and typed another job application, explaining the employment gap without mentioning the affair that ended my career. Outside, families ate dinner together in the hotel parking lot, normal lives I'd shattered. For one night of feeling desired, I'd lost everything. My husband, my daughter, my home, my job. John hadn't needed anger or cruelty. He'd used the law, my own documented choices, and quiet precision to erase me completely. And the worst part, he was right. Actions have consequences. I just never imagined they'd be this devastating. The next morning, I'd start hunting for an apartment I could afford on $600 a month. I'd keep sending resumes. I'd count down to Saturday. But tonight, in the sterile hotel room, regret finally settled in, not just for getting caught, but for the choice that destroyed my family.